It's interesting though to watch the Canadian dollar dip. Do you take that into account in terms of which companies will also benefit from that, or it's just not one of the variables you're focusing on?
No, no,
As a
we're
pivotal variable.
no, we're very much focused on Canadian dollar. Our biggest short position is by far the Canadian dollar. I mean, look, it's uh, the trend is not in our favor for the Canadian dollar either. The trend is down,
Hmm.
and I'm not a currency expert. Nobody on our team is, but it's pretty clear that the trend is that direction. Has been for a while. I'll give it. I'll make it very clear for you and your listeners. I think the day the Canadian dollar bottoms, it will coincidentally be the exact same day that an election is announced in Canada, and we will cover our short that day. And I think a lot of other people will do the same. So just wait for that day to come, and it will
Yeah,
come in the next 12 months. And I think you're going to be within a week of the bottom. I really do believe that. And in fact, you could have a very bullish story in the Canadian dollar, but you're not going to do that until our government
I've already got my
changes.
pen and paper ready. Why I'm going to take notes at the World Outlook Conference. Really paid off last year, I'll tell you. Paid off thanks to people like Paul Beattie, BT Global, who recommended Kit's eyewear last year, and it was still up about 50%. It's come back a little bit, which to me is good news as an investor. But I mean, a huge win. Paul, thanks for taking the time. I should have introduced you a little nicer. Paul, Paul Beattie, BT Global, co-founder, manager, that kind of stuff. But I appreciate you taking the time. But when I think of you, I think of that. You talk to us. I think of for everyone in the audience, they hadn't heard of that stock before. Like literally, I had not heard of that stock before. Your recommendation was good enough for me, but I went and had a look at it, and pleased that I did.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be back. What's funny enough is I think their plant's about a 10-minute drive from the hotel, 10
Yeah,
15 minutes in Vancouver, which I've toured, and it's very impressive. Yeah, Kits Eyewear. These guys are going to disrupt the entire space. There are other people doing it, but basically, buy your glasses online. In fact, I'm wearing them right now, but I just ordered two more pair, and they're charging me, $100 a pair or something. It's a very good value. And I think this is the future. I mean, why do you want to pay $500 in a
hmm,
store when you can get them online? I think everybody's going to have five pairs of glasses that are maybe lower quality and stuff, but I
well,
think
you
the future.
just so you know, as you get older, you got five pairs because you can't remember where the four are. You had them that morning, but you just can't remember. So, yeah, lots of backups in our household, I'll tell you right now. But let me come back to that. Do you still like the company? It sounds like you do, but
Yes, yes,
so
yes.
we've backed off a couple of bucks, which to me, as I say, as an investor, I always think that's good news. If I find something I like and I want to be, purchase more, I love it when it backs off.
Well, here's a stat for you. I mean, this is a growth company, right? Where revenue next year, they plan to hit the 200 million Canadian mark, so like 40% growth. EBITDA positive. Um, they're they've got lots of capacity at their plant, so they can grow this thing to $250 million
Hmm.
in revenue without a whole lot of capex. Business is good. And then if you look at that Warby Parker company in the U.S., there's no really direct comparison in the public markets, unfortunately. But Warby Parker, trades at 3 times sales and is growing at a fraction of what Kits is doing. And Kits right now is valued at $270 million. So it's what 1.3 times sales.
Yeah.
That's not a big multiple. And I think as the story gets better known, more people are aware this multiple. I mean, it should be trading at 2 times sales, and you could argue three. So
But that's a great example, though, of finding a company, and that's why we have professional managers like you and your team, is to find these situations that aren't necessarily, commonly known. I mean, that's the greatest time to get in a quality company that's performing, that's got performance measures. But it's nice to get in a little earlier before it's made the front page. The old, was it Don Cox used to say, you want it on page A16, not page one.
there you go. There you go. I still don't think they're very well recognized, as a stock play. Kits, KITS. Who knows about it? I don't think the Americans know about it a lot. I think they are going to learn about it because Kits said the other day they've identified 20 cities in North America where they're going to go target and do extra promotion next year and
Wow.
have some boots on the ground. I mean, I think for every time they do some kind of promotion advertising Kits, I think people might find out that it's a public company and maybe buy some stock themselves. So
Let's back off to the bigger markets here. We've obviously had an election. The markets seem to like it, and you now calm down a little bit. What's your take, first of all, on the broader market, and secondly, what does it mean to you as a portfolio investor?
well, I'm a little frustrated because I figured that Trump was going to pull it out. Um,
Hmm.
and then, the Trump bump certainly came. I mean, the U.S. market did very well, and we did okay, but we missed some things. The whole crypto bounces was a bit of a big surprise to us. Why Trump getting in is so great for crypto, I'm not sure. Of course, gold fell off a couple of $100, but now it's rebounding quite nicely. So the markets are doing well. I think look, Trump's pro business, and uh, I think he knows what he's doing, right? I mean, this is his second go at it. He's not going to mess it up. One thing I never hear in the press is Trump, all the negative stuff, but the reality is I think he wants to build uh, his family empire, right? He wants to have his legacy. He wants to succeed just to have the Trump name be talked about for the next 100 years, and just like the Bush family and the Kennedy family or whatever. I'm sure he's thinking about this because I think he's going to do his best to do a good job, and so I think it's going to be, he's very clear. It's pro business, pro America. So I think it could be another good year next year in the U.S. markets.
Do you guys at BT Global sort of stand back though and say, okay, I want valuation though. I want to make sure. I mean, because I think it's difficult in this valuation in this environment. At least for me, it is.
Yeah.
I can make an argument both ways. I mean, you can be too general. You can say, look at the S&P, look at its price earnings ratio or something like that. But do you find it more difficult, or do you just have your metrics and you're going to stick to your metrics?
Well, let's be clear. The Canadian stock market is much, much better
Yeah.
value than the U.S. And so I think you can find value everywhere in Canada, all over the place. Uh, yeah, sure. The U.S. market is definitely pricey. The thing is, though, that global phenomenon, right? The world's coming to invest in America. So this measurement of the U.S. stock market to the U.S. GDP, I find that a little bit of a stretch. I mean,
Hmm.
these are global companies just listed in the U.S. So Apple stock, for instance, I mean, they generate half their revenue and income from abroad. So
Yeah.
what does that have to do? What's the link to the U.S. GDP, right? I mean, so that trend is going to continue, as your friend Martin Armstrong said, right? The world's coming to America to invest, and that's going to continue. But look, in Canada, I mean, look, just in the last month, there's very clear evidence that the Canadian stock market's undervalued. Why? Because large companies, take a look at Shopify. They come out with one quarter earnings, and the stock goes up, 23% in a day. It's the stock's not going from stupid expensive to stupid expensive. It had a couple of tough years, and it was good value, and the stock's up 25% in a very short period of time. Look at Air Canada. What happened to Air Canada the other day was at $16 trading at 4 times earnings, and then of course they come out with the quarterly update, and the stock's up $8 in a week.
Hmm.
So I think that just gives you the sense that if you can find the value, eventually the markets will identify that value, and you'll be rewarded as an investor.
Well, I'm sure glad you made that distinction, by the way. I should have. But, there is, we obviously know the Japanese market isn't like the US. Well, as you say, we certainly know Canada is. And I mean, the underperformance over the last several years, it doesn't matter which one of the indexes you want to take, we've dramatically underperformed. It's interesting, though, to watch the Canadian dollar dip. Do you take that into account in terms of which companies will also benefit from that? or it's just not one of the variables you're focusing on?
No, no,
It's a pivotal variable.
we're very much focused on Canadian dollar. Our biggest short position is by far the Canadian dollar. I mean, look, it's the trend is not in our favor for the Canadian dollar either. The trend is down,
Hmm.
and I'm not a currency expert. Nobody on our team is, but it's pretty clear that the trend is that direction. Has been for a while. I'll give it. I'll make it very clear for you and your listeners. I think the day the Canadian dollar bottoms, it will coincidentally be the exact same day that an election is announced in Canada, and we will cover our short that day. And I think a lot of other people will do the same. So just wait for that day to come, and it will
Yeah.
come in the next 12 months. And I think you're going to be within a week of the bottom. I really do believe that. And in fact, you could have a very bullish story in the Canadian dollar, but you're not going to do that until our government changes.
That's a great tip. Seriously, that is a great tip. Timing wise, makes a ton of sense. I mean, to borrow a little from the U.S. example, I don't think there's any doubt where the various parties sit in terms of, let's call it, pro-business. That's a choice that Canadians can make. If they want their emphasis, is something I said right up front in today's show. If you want your emphasis, the Liberals are very clear: strong emphasis on climate change. Strong emphasis on LGBTQ. And other things like that, bigger government. So that is a choice Canadians can make. And then there's another choice, which the Conservatives are, I think, safe to say, more pro-business. We'll see if they deliver. Smaller government, reining in the deficit. So it's a very clear choice. I'm not upset with either one. I respect people have different priorities, so make the choice. But so I think it's a very fair comment to say you're going to watch if a pro-government is going to come in. So if the polls are still where they're at, they announce an election, you'll take action on that basis.
Yeah, I think. I think the world will too. I think
Yeah.
you'll have a lot of people beside you saying, maybe I should pick up some Canadian dollars that are down. It's down 10% in the last year and a half. Is it's and energy. Look, we have all the resources in the world. I mean, some of your speakers have been emphasizing this. We are the richest nation on the planet. We are blessed with everything. We're not going to zero, so there's a lot of value here, and I think I already think the Canadian dollar is cheap, and if energy just holds in steady, and which it looks like it's doing, and if gas, I mean, we own all the gas, right? We have all the water, by the way, as well, and the world needs what we have, and so what's going to turn it? I think a change of government will be enough. What are the things I want? I guess the main theme that I see in these markets is what's working is continuing to work, and what has not been working. Let's say over the last 2 years or whatever, an investment hasn't worked out for you. The industry hasn't worked out for you. I would suggest you still stay away because this is kind of like a momentum type market, and so that's just a general theme. And I don't know if you've got stocks in your portfolio that have done well. There's no reason to say, okay, I'm going to sell all that and jump into another industry that hasn't been doing well, or another stock that has not been doing well. I would just ride with your winners in general.
I just want a quick take from you before you go. And as I say, I want to remind people you'll be at the World Outlook Conference. And, the worst thing about the business is what have you done for me lately? So are you going to, no, I'm not going to ask you to answer this right now, but will there be another Kits Eyewear in your, you've always done a wonderful job. By the way, I'll tell people if you haven't been, Paul's speech is always at the top of the list for most popular. And, but he always gives us, it's very direct, really concise, and here's some things that he's looking at, and he'll tell you why. So that's the worst thing, is you sort of go, can't I just sit back and rest on my laurels for a while? No, you can't.
So, thank you. You're very generous and kind, but we do make mistakes too, which is frustrating for me. Will we have ideas in February? Absolutely. I mean, I've got a whole list of value opportunities that we think are going to be recognized. Look, we think we have good insight into gold equities and the energy technology. Have you ever heard of this company, MDA? Like our favorite company, our largest position now. favorite tech company is this MDA Space. It's
Well, tell us a little about it.
well, they make satellites, right? They're a Canadian company, okay, based out of Brampton, and they got a big setup in Montreal. So Toronto, Montreal, manufacturing. They make satellites. They sell the cheapest satellite at $10 million, and the most expensive at 20. They're gearing up to manufacture 2 per day. Okay, so you do the math. This is a good sized business. Business is very robust. The stock's done incredibly well, MDA. But again, I think the trend continues. So who do they make satellites for? Well, there's this little company called Apple. They want to put up a network in space of satellites. You saw what Elon Musk has done with Starlink, right? And it works. And how many satellites are going to be? Space is a very hot place, hot investment area. And how many satellites are going to be roving around our Earth? You need to start thinking in tens of thousands. Okay. Anyway, these guys have the most capacity. So anyway, the CEO came into Montreal and spoke to us just a couple of weeks ago, and it's incredible. He said our company's growing at 45% this year. We will be growing at 25 to 35% every year for the next 5 years. We have a very strong balance sheet. Our clients include, and he listed off a few governments and multinationals. And he said, oh, by the way, we were doubling the size of our plant in Montreal. We just spent $600 million in CapEx. The market cap of the company was $2.5 billion. So they've spent 600. They're spending another 200. Investing another 200 million in CapEx this year. So $800 million in fresh capital in the last 3 years. This is a growth company. I found out yesterday they hired 900 people this year. This is clearly a growth play. And then guess what? There's no comp to it in Canada, of course not.
Yeah.
But there's no comp in the US. There's no comparable. And so I asked the question, so if you were considered, instead of an industrial manufacturer of satellites and other things, they do a bunch of other things, but all in space related. If you were considered a tech company, wouldn't your multiple be higher? And he goes, well, it's so funny you say that. I just got a call from a US banker who's suggesting that there's going to be a whole new category in the US, a category for investing, which is technology, defense technology, it might be called. And by the way, these satellites are used for defense purposes as well. And so just renaming this exciting new industry, space as an industry, defense and technology related to these two industries, if you just recategorize it, who knows what the multiple might go to? And by the way, they're number one in the world at what they do, and certainly in the US at what they do. So what kind of multiple could the Americans take this to? And I said, well, are you going to go to the US? And he's like, yeah, we'll be listed in the US sometime in 2025. So what's the multiple going to be? I don't think anybody really knows, but it's going to be higher than it is today. I would conclude.
Well, we'll hear more like that and more on that when you come to the World Outlook Conference. Fascinating story. And as you say, I hadn't heard of the company, and I should have by now, if you know what I mean. So there's still a lot in that vein, to come. And as you say, it gets noticed, it gets publicity with these expansions, these dramatic expansion, 900 new workers. I mean, in a country that will certainly welcome that kind of high quality, skilled, well-paid labor. So yeah, great stuff. Paul, I really look forward to having a chance to just catch up personally, but see you on stage at the World Outlook Conference. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Mike. Good to
Founder,
hear you.
portfolio manager, Beattie Global. I'll give you more information on that. You can see it on our website, our social media.